You know that old joke that if you ever land on the moon, the first person you'll meet is a Keralite ready to offer you a hot cup of tea? Well, it's funny, right? But it gets at a really fascinating truth about one of the most mobile communities on the planet. Today, we're going to dive into that story, the Keralite Diaspora. It's a global journey of ambition, economics, and some really big changes. It's a question that people from Kerala, also known as Malayalis, often ask with a bit of a wink. I mean, it really seems like no matter where you go, from a huge city like Dubai to a tiny town in Canada, you're bound to run into someone from this community. But is that just a fun exaggeration, or is there some real data to back it up? Well, the answer is a whopping 182. Yeah, you heard that right. According to government data, people from Kerala are living in 182 out of 195 countries on Earth. That's nearly 93% of the entire globe. It's actually easier to list the few places they aren't officially registered. We're talking Pakistan, a few nations in Central Africa, and some tiny island states. So yeah, that joke about the moon, not as far-fetched as it sounds.
So where is all this coming from? Let's talk about Kerala. It's this beautiful slice of land on India's southwestern coast, often called God's own country, but its influence is truly global. For centuries, its spice-rich coast was a magnet for traders from Rome, China, and the Arab world. So this history of connecting with outsiders, of looking outwards, it's woven deep into the cultural DNA of the state. Okay, so the first huge chapter in the modern story of Keralite migration didn't start by looking west to Europe or America. Nope. It started by looking to its neighbors in the Middle East. And this movement, it would go on to reshape the destiny of millions of families and the economy of the entire state. So picture this. It's the 1970s. The oil boom hits the Gulf countries, and suddenly they need workers. Lots of them. Keralites, who are facing high unemployment back home, jumped at the chance. This kicked off what's now known as the legendary Gulf Boom, a massive wave of migration that made the Gulf nations the #1 destination for decades to come. And the impact was just staggering. This wasn't just a few people finding jobs. It was an economic lifeline for the entire state. The money they sent home, what we call remittances, completely transformed Kerala's economy. Just look at this data from 2003. The amount of Gulf money coming in was 1.74 times the state's entire revenue. It just dwarfed everything else. And this chart, it really tells the story in numbers. You could see the numbers of immigrants just climbing and climbing, hitting a peak of 2.4 million in 2013. But then, look what happens. For the first time in decades, the number actually starts to go down. Stricter rules in the Gulf, economic slowdowns, things were starting to change. A major shift was happening. Now, that decline didn't mean Keralites stopped migrating. Not at all. It just meant they started looking at a totally different part of the map. The Gulf dream wasn't over, but it was definitely making way for new ambitions in new places. And that shift is so clear right here. Back in 1998, a massive 94% of Keralite immigrants were in the Gulf. Fast forward, and that number's dropped to about 80%. But that slice for the rest of the world, it's more than tripled. This shows a huge pivot, a diversification of where people are choosing to go. And listen, this isn't just about changing your address. It's a change in the entire reason for migrating. You can see the contrast here. The classic Gulf migrant was usually a laborer on a temporary work visa, and the main goal was sending money home. The new global North migrant, the one heading to Europe, North America, or Australia, is often a student or a skilled professional. And their goal? It's often to build a new life and settle down for good.
So what's the single biggest engine driving this new wave? You guessed it, it's the youth. We're talking about a whole generation of young Keralites packing their bags not just for a job, but for a college degree. The scale of this is just incredible. In only 5 years, between 2018 and 2023, the number of students leaving Kerala to study abroad almost doubled. It jumped all the way to 250,000. This surge is pretty much the main reason why Kerala's overall emigration numbers have stayed high, even while the numbers going to the Gulf have been falling. So, where are they all going? Well, the new map points straight to the English-speaking world and Western Europe. Places like the UK, Canada, and Australia are at the top of the list. And it's not just because of their great universities. It's because they offer clear paths to permanent residency, which is a huge goal for this new generation. So what's really driving all this? Honestly, it's a mix of things. Young people are looking for better education, sure, and higher salaries, definitely, but they're also looking for a different quality of life. Things like more personal freedom, better social security, and a feeling that their work is more respected. Now, as you can imagine, this massive movement of people has huge consequences.
It creates this really complex two-way street with both incredible benefits and some serious challenges for Kerala itself.
Okay, first, let's talk about the money. Because even with all these changes, the remittances are still unbelievably strong. In 2023, a staggering amount, we're talking over 26 billion US dollars, flowed back into Kerala. So the diaspora, both old and new, is still a massive economic engine for the state.
But here's the other side of that coin. During the COVID-19 pandemic, more than 1.5 million Keralites had to return home, a lot of them because they lost their jobs in the Gulf. This huge number really exposed how fragile that older migration model was. It was often based on temporary work with very little long-term security.
And this brings us to what might be the biggest new challenge for Kerala: brain drain. See, the Gulf model was a cycle. People left, earned money, and sent a lot of it back home. This new model is different. When a student goes to, say, Canada, gets a degree, lands a great job, and decides to settle down, it's not just their talent that leaves Kerala. It's also their future earnings and investments, which now mostly stay in their new country.
So what does this all mean for the future? Well, what we're watching is the fundamental remaking of one of the world's great diasporas, and the long-term consequences are really just starting to become clear.
As the migration expert S. Irudaya Rajan puts it, migration is now in the blood of a Malayali. And that just says it all, doesn't it? This isn't a trend that's going away. What we're seeing isn't the end of migration from Kerala. It's a deep evolution, a change in where people go, why they go, and what happens when they get there.
And that leaves us with one final, really critical question. For a state that has, for so long, exported its talent and thrived on what came back, what happens when that talent doesn't come back? As a new generation puts down permanent roots all over the world, what does the future really hold for God's own country? That's a question Kerala and all of us will be watching very closely.